Alrighty then, we'll call this meeting to order. 5:03 p.m. Item A, Zoom meeting information, check. Item B, roll call. Chair, I am here. Vice Chair Ned Dorf.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Alder Mark Stoyer.
Also in the flesh.
All right. Jenny Brinker. She's waving, she's here. Amy Cox.
Here.
Krista Kananen, she's not here, excused. Corey Min.
Present.
Julia Norday.
Here.
And Mark Walter.
Here.
All right. We will move on to approval of the agenda for today's meeting, November 15th. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Ned. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mark Walter. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right,
Can you tell me who did the first and the second?
Ned and Walter Mark.
Well,
Yeah. All right, and then now approval of the minutes from our last meeting on October 18th. We have a motion to approve the minutes
so moved.
by Mark Stoyer. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
By Corey. All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Excellent. We'll move on now to item E, presentations. We have something long awaited and much anticipated. The presentation from the city's consultants, Slipstream. So for the last, I think, almost year and a half, Maddie and her team have been working with Melissa, who's been putting in just a ton of work, folks at City Transit, folks at the city water utility, the Sisters of St. Francis have been supporting on this community effort to produce a living document that outlines how we can accomplish our goals to hit 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality for the community by 2050. This has been a goal that really has been with the Sustainability Commission since we started just a little more than 5 years ago. And something that was really made possible by the support of the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. So really excited for all the community support, all the community input, the folks that have come here today to be able to make this plan a reality. And for really just all of the good stuff that this allows us to continue doing into the future. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Maddie, who's going to give a presentation. And since we have like 10-15 minutes for this, we'll just hold our questions until the end. But we'll have a chance both for questions, discussion, and then we'll make a separate motion on the plan after the presentation. So Maddie, take it away.
Great, thanks, Seth. And I'm really excited to be here and to be sharing results with you all today. And I just want to also highlight the help of NWTC and University of Wisconsin Green Bay in providing this, in addition to all the partners that Seth mentioned previously. So this is an agenda for the presentation today. Seth did the introduction already. We're going to jump right into objectives, the baseline data and community engagement, interim targets and estimated reductions, an overview of recommendations, and then leave time at the end for any questions. So moving right along, to start with just an overview of this planning process, as Seth mentioned, we've been working on this for almost a year and a half now. We started with an inventory of community-wide carbon emissions to understand a baseline for the city. We engaged the community through public surveys and an open house. We identified recommended actions across 6 different focus areas, and we developed interim targets for 2030 to kind of quantify the estimated impact of the recommended actions and set some interim goals. So moving into the baseline carbon emissions profile, we used 2018 data, and this was actually established as the baseline by the Sustainability Commission, and we continued with using that baseline. We collected electricity and natural gas data from WPS, transportation data from secondary sources, and then water and wastewater from New Water and from the city of Green Bay specifically. And here you can see that almost 87% of emissions do come from buildings. There's a couple of different reasons for that. One of them is that the grid that serves the city of Green Bay does have a high carbon emissions intensity, which means that per unit of electricity produced, there's a high amount of emissions that's released. The other reason for the high impact of buildings is that Green Bay does have a large industrial sector, and so that leads to some higher energy use from that industrial sector compared to other similar sized cities. Just a few things we wanted to highlight on the community engagement. As we mentioned, we did a survey and then an open house with draft recommendations. Many of you attended that. We had 650 residential responses for the online survey. This is considered statistically significant. We had 24 business responses to the online survey. We had 50 attendees at the open house. That's a rough estimation. And we had 70 comments on our draft recommendations. On the right, you can kind of see what the population of Green Bay thinks of the city's goals overall. A large portion either think it could be more ambitious or is just right, and a smaller proportion either thinks it's a little too ambitious or is directly opposed to the goal. So I mentioned interim targets, and these are all set for 2030, and they're really set as interim goals and to help us quantify the impact of our different recommended actions that you'll see in the future across 6 different focus areas. So you can see these interim targets are split by buildings, clean electricity, and transportation. For buildings, we focus on municipal energy use, both reducing it and converting fossil fuel energy use to electricity. And then for community-wide, it's the same thing with slightly different targets, all by 2030. For clean electricity, we also separate by municipal and community-wide. In this case, these goals are really being driven partially by WPS's commitments. The WPS has committed to reducing its carbon emissions intensity by 80% by 2030. Which amounts to about 20% nuclear and 40% renewable, which is how we get to roughly the 60% goals here. And then transportation, you see a roughly 15% reduction for both municipal and community-wide emissions. So as I mentioned, these interim targets help us estimate the CO2 reductions by 2030. So here you can see the baseline of 2018 and then what we could get to in 2030 from clean electricity, buildings, and transportation. One thing I'll note is that to get all the way to carbon neutral by 2050, roughly a 4% reduction is needed every single year. You can see here that the largest impact is from clean electricity. It just transitioning to renewables has a big impact on carbon emissions for the city. Okay, so jumping into all the recommended actions now. These are pretty high level, but like I mentioned, we do have time at the end for questions. So starting with buildings, the first half of the building recommendations are focused more on municipal energy use, like I said, reducing it and transitioning it from fossil fuel energy use to electricity. So there's some goals set in here or recommendations to install energy efficiency upgrades in facilities, to also introduce heat pump installations in city buildings, and then to develop some policies that help guide future actions in the city, both operational policies to guide behavior, purchasing policies to guide what sort of equipment is being purchased in different buildings, and then also a high performance building standard that will guide new construction standards. So these recommendations help the city kind of lead the way by demonstrating its commitment to reducing carbon emissions, but also all of these can serve as resources for the community overall, with different policies and guides serving as resources, and then the lessons learned and case studies from the city taking actions also serving as resources. In addition to municipal buildings, there are community-specific commercial and residential recommendations as well. The first one is to encourage sustainable construction through city funding programs. The city can't actually mandate a certain efficiency level for new buildings, but encouraging it through funding programs is one way that other cities have done it. Developing a benchmarking program for commercial buildings. This requires that commercial buildings track and report their energy use annually. And it has been shown in other cities that this can lead from between to around 2% savings each year on commercial energy use. And then the last one is to explore policies to reduce residents' energy bills through energy efficiency. There's similar disclosure policies that have been passed in other places, either for rental homes or at time of sale for privately owned homes as well. Moving into clean electricity recommendations, you can see again the interim targets that are kind of guiding these recommendations. We again have some city-specific ones or city operations, installing PV on specific facilities to reach around 6% renewable electricity for city operations, and then also identifying off-site renewable energy solutions to expand that percent renewable. As I mentioned, WPS has some pretty strong goals for clean electricity. And so some of these other goals are focused on working with WPS to make sure that they're working towards those commitments and that the city and utility are collaborating on those. And then the other two are focused on helping businesses and residents have the opportunity and lower barriers so that they can install solar on their own homes if they want. So the second one is focused on a group buy, which basically negotiates a standard cost for solar that is usually lower. And then the other one, streamlining solar adoption, is doing things like having a checklist online or reviewing permitting restrictions to make it easier for homeowners or businesses to install solar. So moving on to transportation, the municipal recommendations focus on first piloting low carbon vehicles and municipal fleets. We identified vehicle types that are cost effective and feasible to start implementing into city fleets now. And then the second one is again a policy that can help guide that in the future, helping make sure that the city, when they are buying new vehicles, really assesses if that vehicle is needed or if a similar vehicle can perform the same functions, and then looking at the total cost of ownership, so understanding both operating costs and upfront costs to inform whether you buy a gasoline or an electric vehicle. The community-wide transportation recommendations focus on working with the private sector to develop public EV charging. We received a lot of comments about the city being strategic and how it goes about public EV charging, which is why this is written in engaging the private sector rather than necessarily installing a bunch of chargers the city itself. And then supporting holistic transportation solutions, including walking and biking trails and increased use of public transportation. The next set of recommendations fall into the category of education. This is really important, especially right now, because there is unprecedented funding that businesses and residents can access from the federal government and the state government. And so it's really important to make sure people know about those. So all of these recommendations work together to try to make sure that there's awareness across the city of Green Bay and that people are working to lower carbon emissions together. So the first one is to hire an employee that's focused on this. The next one talks about developing an education hub on the City of Green Bay website with some resources. The third one is about conducting outreach and marketing to residents and businesses and really making sure that that's done in a way that accesses everyone in the community, going to community organizations, working with the schools, working with other local partners. The fourth one is really about highlighting what people are doing to celebrate the successes that the city is having, and also creating a database of ideas for other people. And then the last one is focused on the clean energy workforce and making sure that there's economic development opportunities and enough people to put in the heat pumps and the solar that the city needs. The last two focus areas are advocacy and urban tree canopy. Advocacy really focuses on continuing to advocate with other local governments for improved state policies. So as I mentioned, building codes or how efficient new buildings have to be is set by the state. So that's an example of something that local governments can help advocate for to ensure that as many policies as possible are climate friendly. And then urban tree canopy is really about promoting increased urban tree canopy, so more trees in the city, which can help with actually absorbing carbon, and then also decrease cooling needs from increased shade across the community. Okay, so there's a lot in this plan, and so we also have some recommendations on how to actually go about implementing some of these things. So the first one is to leverage an internal city team, develop a set of people across departments that can talk about this, that can think through policies, other things like that. To collaborate with the Sustainability Commission, a lot of dedicated people who can help with outreach, help with engagement, help with policy research as needed. Develop a prioritization process so that you're not trying to do all of this at once. Develop a way to determine which ones are top priorities each year. Consider how to track progress towards the goals and towards the interim targets. We set a process in this of how to get community-wide data, think about how often to do that, and then continue to engage the community, both so that they are aware of what the city is doing and can provide their own lessons learned, their own information on how to reach this goal together. And then the last thing I just want to highlight is that there is a lot of funding available. We highlight a couple of different ways that the city can get funding and also let community members know about funding. Leveraging fuel and maintenance cost savings that are generated from these actions to fund future capital expenses, applying for themselves, but also creating awareness of those federal tax credits that I mentioned, utilizing and publicizing Focus on Energy, which are state incentives, and then identifying and applying for other state and federal grant and financing opportunities. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. And I also have our contact information here, me and my main colleague on this, in case people want to follow up offline.
All right, thank you, Maddie. Do we have questions on the presentation? Yeah, Ned, please.
Thank you, Maddie, for the presentation. I have a couple questions about the carbon costs, slide 9, somewhere in there. The estimated CO2 reductions. Because we do get asked this question sometimes, are the life cycle costs factored into that as far as production of solar panels, drilling of oil, fracking for natural gas, as far as bringing down, it's slide 9 on my computer, but maybe not, it's not that one. It's the estimated CO2 reduction. Yeah, thank you. Or is that just the output being measured?
It's only the output from the grid being measured. So it's basically for the electricity that's currently being produced, for example, what is coming from power plants right now in terms of carbon emissions. It doesn't go all the way back to the source of extracting that. And that is also, just to be clear, it's not in the baseline or in the reduction. So that's considered scope 3 emissions, which is outside of the scope of the baseline profile that we did.
Thank you. I have another question on public buildings. We have the municipal data represented. We have, many other public buildings in the city within city limits. Do those public buildings show up under community-wide? Like the schools, the university, the county buildings, things like that?
Yes, those are all under community wide because we don't have access to their specific energy data. The data that we get from WPS also doesn't differentiate that for us. So the only one that we're really able to pull out is the buildings that the city owns because they're able to give us the energy data for those buildings.
Thank you so much.
Great. Other questions for Maddie? Mark?
Hi, Maddie, nice job. This is really informative. I do have a question though, actually going back to the slide after this one where it talks about community engagement.
Mhm.
So 42% of the people who responded are not in support, or, too ambitious, far too ambitious, opposed to the goal. Do you have comments from all this so that we can actually judge that and actually target some of our efforts to better address why those people are opposed?
Yeah, we did in the survey ask some questions about like, please let us know what your concerns are with these goals as well. And Melissa does have access to all of those. What I can share from our own review of those is that some of the comments about it being too ambitious or far too ambitious are actually concerns about the impact on residents, the impact on low income residents, and how this is actually applied in those situations. It's a little hard to know for sure if those are the only concerns, but I would say that those two especially aren't necessarily saying that people aren't in favor of climate strategies. I think they're just concerned about costs and how the impacts might come down to residents and businesses more than being against it completely. And we can provide more context on that as well. But yeah, it is in the survey results.
And one other thing to note is, so we asked people if they wanted to be contacted later on, things like that. So people that indicated we do have a way of communicating with the people that want to be communicated with. But also that community energy educator position that's being created, that will hopefully address some of those questions, some of those concerns of, well, how can we take advantage of this, or really how can we do these things? So getting the word out about how they could finance, they wanted to put solar on their house or save energy otherwise, or electrify their homes. So we're hoping that we can dispel some of the, be a myth buster, with some of those concerns.
Yeah, because I'll mention we asked also in the survey, which is kind of highlighted in the report, but not in this slide, about specific strategies, and those percent of agreement or at least neutral were a lot higher. They were usually between 70 and 90% compared to the, I think, 58 that we see here. I don't know if I did that math quite right, but so we do see that. I think that's where the goal versus taking climate action kind of needs to be separated in some ways, because I think a larger portion of people say yes to agreeing with specific strategies, and like over 90% say yes, saving energy is important.
Awesome. Alder?
Thank you, Chair. And Maddie, thank you for the presentation. I think just some of the general comments about people being opposed or not too much into it. I think a lot of times there might be a little ignorance involved, only in the sense, and it's not to point fingers, but when you read this report, there's a lot in it. And we on council get a lot of reports. We have to look at a lot of things. We don't pretend to understand every nuance of it, but the big thing for us is cost, types of costs, but also it's a plan. As the plans can change, there are things that can be tweaked. And I think right now there might be just some folks that just don't know enough about it. I think as more information comes out and more education develops, I think that will change drastically. Thank you.
Great. Other questions for Maddie? We have someone in the audience, motion to suspend the rules. We have a second. I'll second by Mark and then Mark. All right, and we'll have, what's that?
Was that Mark and Mark?
Ned and Mark. And we'll have a next portion of the agenda to discuss and weigh in on the plan, pro con, any comments, but yeah, questions. We can have that discussion right now. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no.
Aye.
And Natalie, say your name and address.
Yeah, it's Natalie Hoffman, 559 Robbie Street, apartment 9. I have two questions actually. So the first one, I was just curious because I know that it was addressed about the energy usage from municipal buildings, and I was curious if that would apply also to like any publicly owned buildings. Like I'm thinking specifically about like, you know, the affordable housing projects that are coming through the city. Would that be included in terms of making those buildings more sustainable in their energy usage?
Yeah, the recommendation would be for any new construction buildings that are publicly owned to follow kind of those new construction guidelines that we mentioned. So I would say yes. I will say I don't know all of the details of those affordable housing developments. So Melissa, feel free to weigh in, but that would be the goal of guidelines like that.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And then I was just curious if this plan would be binding at all.
Well, I mean, the motion that we have on the agenda for tonight is to refer it to improvement services for consideration and then adoption. So each project, each recommendation will be we'll have to evaluate that when it's, you know, when we're in the moment, it's going out for bid, you know, when we're doing that. So when you say binding, doesn't mean like every single recommendation will have to be followed. I'm not gonna be able to answer that specifically one way or the other, because that's gonna go to a committee and then it's gonna go to city council, so.
Unless it were adopted as a complete resolution ordinance,
Mhm.
or it wouldn't be fully binding all the way through.
Okay.
Right.
But I mean, Natalie, like in the past with plans too, you know, plans do change a bit, you know, I mean. There are many that sit on shelves, but this is just a guide that, you know, hopefully. The forces that be will look at it and say, you know, this is good, let's move forward with this, and you know, we need plans in place too, if we want to get grants and funding and different things like that. We need to have something in place so that when agencies and that look at that, they go, oh, they have a plan in place. That's a bonus for us, so that's another reason why we need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience while we have the floor open? We'll open it up later to the comments. Think of anything later.
Motion to close the floor.
All right, there's a motion to close the floor by Ned. Is there a second by Martin Walter? All those in favor of closing the floor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, floor closed. Any other questions from the commission table or Zoom room? Alder?
A couple of minor ones maybe. We talked about the housing units, like 45,000 some housing units. Does that include apartments, or are these just homes per se?
It includes apartment units as well.
That includes that, okay, I figured that. I like the way you brought up the fact that a 4% reduction over 25 years will get us to zero, you know, whether it's perfect that way. But that seems like a reasonable goal, at least to look at it that way, because I think when you look at a long-term solution, sometimes it seems overwhelming, like how are we gonna get there? But if you break it down, I think that's a good thing. The education hub, you mentioned the city website. Will there be any other hub type activities? You know, there are folks that don't have computers. But I'm just saying that you were talking about the city website being an education hub. Are there other thoughts of what that might be?
Yeah, definitely. So this conduct outreach and marketing to residents and businesses is really supposed to be pretty all-encompassing. And in that recommendation, more than the hub, there's a lot of recommendations about creating materials that can go onto the website, but that also can be shared in person with people, and lots of also recommendations about having presentations in person, making sure that you interact with school districts, with community organizations, making sure that materials are translated whenever possible so that different people can access them. So the answer is yes. The recommendation is to definitely go beyond the website and make sure that that outreach and marketing is occurring in lots of different ways to ensure that residents who might not have computers or might prefer in-person presentations are also being reached.
Okay. I can see effective marketing tools if you know, short videos that might be put out every once in a while so folks can follow along or, just keep people in the loop. And, I suppose that's one of the thoughts of a tool to be used as well. Yes.
Yeah, and I will double check and make sure we mention video specifically in the report. And if we didn't, we can make a quick edit. But I know we did mention lots of different modes.
Thank you.
Cool. Ned?
I had to follow up on you brought up nuclear as an option for bringing these numbers down, and obviously nuclear is a carbon, neutral kind of a energy source. But with the cost of setting up, nuclear plants and the lack of permitting going on with nuclear, what would an energy profile look like that the city would be able to take on itself? Because obviously we aren't building power plants, right? But is
Yeah.
what are
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So a couple of things. One, where we recommend heat pumps for municipal buildings, we're including geothermal heat pumps in that. So that is a source of renewable energy that could be used in buildings. There's also, for different buildings, you might need to explore different types of heat pumps just to electrify. And then the other big thing is really that the city should be thinking about solar as much as possible. It can go on top of facilities, but also there are programs that allow you to do off-site renewable installations, which can increase the percent of renewable that the city is directly using. It's pretty hard, to your point, for the city to actually have nuclear or wind or anything like that. Wind is potentially, the city could do some wind turbines, but it would need a lot of space. So solar is really the main one that the city should pursue for direct installation. The reason that I mentioned nuclear is because WPS directly mentions it, and that their grid will still have nuclear as a percent of it as of 2030. I don't know all of WPS's plans, but that is where the nuclear is coming from, not from city installing anything.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Oh, do we have Julia in the Zoom room?
Thanks, Seth. It's just a comment. So thank you so much for the presentation. Really exciting work. And I'm really excited that urban tree canopy is in there, because that will also help with stormwater issues. And they're also, one of the cheaper things we can do. They don't take engineering and permitting. So I think that's a really great thing that we could start implementing right away, is more trees.
Thank you. Other questions from Zoom or at the table here? Jenny?
I'll bring up, I don't know if it's a question, it's more for discussion, maybe later. But Maddie, I love all these recommendations, so really good job on this. I especially am thinking about the implementation, and that slide where you kind of strategize how we're going to implement included a cross office. What is it? I got to move some of you around. An internal city team where you have like cross-departmental collaboration on implementing this, which is certainly going to be needed. And that maybe that's more for discussion after this, but I'm curious if there was any support that you garnered or anything you can comment on how to implement that successfully.
Yeah, I can. Oh,
but
Melissa, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, throughout this project, we did interact with multiple staff members across the city. Melissa did an excellent job of bringing people in. And I would say that's actually what led to this recommendation, is there was a ton of people that were really interested in understanding how this gets implemented and knew a lot more about what the barriers to implementation are and what the opportunities are. And so that's why we recommended this. So there are staff members that I think are definitely interested in understanding how some of these things can be implemented. And I will leave it to Melissa to say any more about other support that she's heard. But I would say that, yeah, there is some support across the city to have this.
Yeah, definitely. We have some very enthusiastic and passionate employees of the city of Green Bay that were part of this planning process, Jenny. From fire department to police department, across the board. And they each have different things that they're really interested in and have been wanting the city to get involved with for quite some time. So those would be the first people that I would ask to be on this team. And we've already had discussions with the mayor and he's in full support. He actually brought it up to me. So I know that next year we'll have, you know, there'll be more things that another thing that I'll be working on is organizing a green team for the city. How that is exactly structured and everything is, you know, still to be decided. But I don't think we're gonna have any problem getting interested employees that want to be on that team.
Okay, that's great. And I know everyone, we make these reports, like, you just want to make sure they get implemented, right? So this is all really encouraging. Thank you.
Julia, you have a question?
Nope, sorry.
No worries, wasn't sure if that was the same Kim. All right, other questions for Maddie or for Melissa?
And Maddie, I'm not sure, it says I'm controlling one of the screens, but I'm not really 100% sure. If you can you take that? There you go. Good, thank you.
All right, well, hearing none, we can move on to regular business, but thank you, again.
Comments, or were we gonna save those?
Well, we're going into discussion next.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thank you, Maddie, for the presentation. And yeah, now on to regular business, discussion and possible action on the Clean Energy Green Bay Plan to send it to the INS Committee for adoption and implementation. And I know we have some members of the public who might want to speak. Maybe we can start out by opening up the floor. Motion to open the floor. Motion to open up the floor by Alder Stoyer. Is there a second? Second. By Ned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, we've got the floor open. To give a statement, just say your name and address.
My name is Sally Ann Brickner and I reside at 3110 Nicolay Drive at the Mother House of the Sisters of St. Francis of the Holy Cross. And I want to thank Slipstream and you in preparing this report for including the Sisters of St. Francis and even the mayor put it in this way. Thank you. Appreciate that. In addition to policies on sustainability, in 2014, my Franciscan community installed solar photovoltaic panels, which have provided 1,826 megawatts of clean energy with a lifetime CO2 emission offset of 1,141 tons of carbon. Currently, our solar arrays meet half of the electrical energy needs in our home. My community of sisters and associates also adopted a corporate stance in 2016, recognizing the moral mandate to respect and care for Earth, both personally and communally. To that end, I express strong support for adoption of the Clean Energy Green Bay Plan as presented here. Indeed, there is great urgency that the city move toward a carbon-free future envisioned by Mayor Gingrich and the Common Council. That urgency was expressed by Pope Francis in his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si, and most recently in his exhortation Laudate Deum, issued on October 4th. Speaking of climate change, he said, "With the passage of time, I have realized that our responses have not been adequate, while the world in which we live is collapsing and may be nearing the breaking point. In addition to this possibility, it is indubitable that the impact of climate change will increasingly prejudice the lives and families of many persons, and I would add, many species other than human. Our US government concurs about the urgency. Its fifth National Climate Assessment, NCA 5, issued on Tuesday, found that the impacts of extreme climate events are costing America $150 billion every year. Quote, with every increment of global warming, costly damages are expected to accelerate. Unquote, NOAA officials said in a statement about the report. Quote, for example, 2 degrees Fahrenheit of warming is projected to cause more than twice the economic harm induced by 1 degree Fahrenheit of warming. High annual temperatures and tropic cyclones are associated with lower GDP growth. These dire predictions about the steep economic costs of inaction render an urgent response in the form of clean energy adoption. On another front on Tuesday, US News announced that among 150 cities, Green Bay captured the highest ranking for best place to live in 2023-2024. Promoting climate resilience will enhance that value for Green Bay's residents and visitors alike. Certain elements of the plan are of particular importance because they promote engagement of Green Bay's businesses and residents. I would highlight the promotion of solar. In whatever ways the city can do so, it will achieve clean energy sooner by providing a means wherein businesses and residents can attain a cost-benefit analysis of solar installation, by facilitating a solar group buy to lower barriers and costs for solar, and by streamlining adoption of solar on homes and businesses. Education. This is near and dear to my heart. Though 59% of residents to the community survey agreed with the city's clean energy goals or desired that the goals be more ambitious, 19% of respondents opposed the goals, while others thought them too ambitious, 11%, or far too ambitious, 12%. Education about the cost benefits of clean energy, including its impact on future generations, might be helpful in moving the needle of public opinion and generating early and wide adoption of energy-saving measures. Therefore, it would be very fruitful to hire an energy education employee who, like our outstanding resiliency coordinator, Melissa Schmidt, could coordinate the development of an education hub with energy resources, conduct outreach and marketing to inform residents and businesses about energy efficiency, electrification, and tax rebates available through the Inflation Reduction Act. The education coordinator could also highlight energy-saving actions by local businesses and residents. She or he could work with Parks and Recreation to promote tree benefits and proper tree planting. On transportation, in addition to electrification of city-owned vehicles and buses, the expansion and improved service of public transportation could contribute to increased ridership by the public, as well as enhanced air quality in the metro area. The installation of more EV charging stations would promote the use of electric vehicles. The urban tree canopy. This greatly enhances the aesthetic appeal of the city, even as it provides increased shade along with absorption of CO2. We see diseased and dead trees throughout the city, a matter which requires our urgent action on behalf of the 7th generation. One of the biggest line items in the Inflation Reduction Act's forestry budget goes to urban forests. Some $1.5 billion is appropriated for the Urban and Community Forest Assistance Program, which provides technical and financial help to local communities so they can plant and maintain urban trees, educate citizens about tree care, and train tree workers. Hopefully, Green Bay is taking advantage of this. I fully support the Clean Energy Green Bay Plan, knowing that it is a living document that will be revised and upgraded in the years ahead. I urge that it be accepted by the Sustainability Commission this evening and moved forward for adoption by committee and common council of the city of Green Bay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I feel like we should pause.
A lot of work.
Yeah, thank you for your statement and for coming tonight and for your support in making this plan happen. Really appreciate it. Do you have any other members of the public who'd like to speak while the floor is open?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, my
Please
name
state
is,
your name. You know the drill.
my name is Sue Vanderheim. I reside at 1282 Ridgedale Court in Green Bay. I'm excited about this plan. That's why I'm here tonight. I think it's, in addition to everything that Sister Sally Ann said, I really think that if we want to consider the tourism aspect, I think that that's a win-win for us. So to do any of this, we always have to keep in our mind that that can boost tourism, which can boost investment, which is just a great accomplishment for us. But the question I have is, if we're considering 4% every year as far as the reduction, is there a way that the community will know that? Or will know that we're doing better or per year? Or is that something that the energy educator would be on top of, or?
Well, ideally, what we will do is we'll be continuing to track our annual energy usage as a city, and then also getting data from WPS on the community usage as well, so that we can keep tracking it over time. What many cities do is every 5 years, they'll update their carbon benchmark to be able to track those emissions. It is a very labor intensive task to do that. So we would likely need to either fold it in to many different areas of the city, that not necessarily just one person. The city is also part of the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, which Green Bay is one of the original members of that. It's only a couple of years old, but we have 30 local governments, which are cities and counties that are part of that. And we're looking at a solution on the state level so that we can standardize, so that the state has a standardized way for asking communities to report their energy usage and their carbon emissions. Because right now there's different methods, and it, do you include streetlights? Do you include we need formal guidance on that. So that's one thing that Green Bay, that I'm involved with, but we're not quite there yet. But in the meantime, yes, we will continue to track our energy usage and try to stay up to date as much as possible on that. And then put that on the website in that energy hub so that we can keep reporting. And then as projects are completed over time, add that in to the reductions that the city has taken. So it's all part of the implementation plan, and it will be, I'm gonna say will be interesting, but we definitely need extra help for that. So maybe the grant money to employ a consultant to help the city with that as well, because it's an ongoing thing. So. Mm-hmm. Maddie, did I cover that, or can you think of anything else?
No, that was a great answer.
Other question, say your name.
Jamie Walsh, 1241 Lost Street. First of all, good work. Thanks to everybody involved. Just a question about sort of the scope of the exercise. This does a great job of sort of laying out, given current patterns of land use and population behavior, how we can take that and decarbonize and reduce the amount of energy needed to support that. There's another lever out here that was probably outside the scope of this exercise, and that's all right, but it's not unimportant, which is how do we take, you know, the city as it is and reconfigure it in a way that actually allows people to live their lives without consuming as much energy. And then there's things like how do we make the city denser? How do we you know, build in more walkable neighborhoods that enable people to, you know, be less car dependent. And like almost all American cities, we're a long way from utopia on that one. Well, like any city. But I guess my question is, to what extent are these sort of changes, and it's not this body, if anything, in the city would be the community economic development portfolio that would have most of those tools at its disposal. But was there any thought as to how those levers could be moved as part of the greater effort here?
In the longer report, Jamie.
Yeah.
So this was like the summary.
Mhm.
They do get into a little bit of more walkability, bikeability, things like that. I do some bikes. And there was a lot of community feedback about that.
Right. I mean, it's good. When I think about it, it's difficult to model and probably to track. So I get it. There's plenty of low hanging fruit, but just didn't want to distract.
I think there was a story in some of the local media last week about City of Green Bay's plans to densify downtown, for example.
Right.
I also am a downtown resident. I'm the president of our downtown neighborhood association. And I think that's one of the things that we want to do in our neighborhood too, is just have more neighbors, have more of a walkable community.
Did you move recently? I thought you were blocked down.
I used to be a block away from
Okay,
you.
all right.
Now I'm a couple blocks that way.
All right.
Which is great to live down here because it's so walkable. You know, can go to the YMCA. But I feel very heartened by, you know, the City of Green Bay's effort to make downtown more dense, have more people. My favorite part of living here is not having to drive, except for when I have to go to the grocery store. The grocery store down here, but
We'll get there.
yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate those comments and totally agree. Thank you. Other questions from? Yeah, Laura.
I don't know if this is appropriate.
Address.
Oh, sorry. My name is Laura McCoy. I live at 740 South Jackson Street. And I'm here, I'm the current president of the Green Bay School Board. And I guess my goal would be to kind of, some of you might know this already, but our district passed a resolution over 3 years ago. The name of the resolution is to establish goals, sustainability, clean energy, and carbon neutrality. Some of the people in this room helped us do that. It's a commitment that we made. It's a serious commitment. COVID came and we got derailed, but we're back on track now. And one of the ways that we're back on track is we're currently putting together, one of the things the resolution required is that we put together, I always call it the green team. That's not the actual title, but that's what I call it, of people in the community, such as yourselves, to have a group that meets and basically the goal is to help us reach our goals. They're ambitious goals, and the clock is ticking. And so we're right now taking applications. You can go to our website and apply to be on this committee. Applications will be accepted through November 22nd at 4 o'clock, I think is the deadline. And I have really high hopes for this group. I'm really excited about it. I have all kinds of ideas about how we can work with the city possibly and the county and bring kids into this process. And I'm kind of hoping we'll have like a subcommittee of students that might, you know, have their own plans and hopes and dreams and bring that to this committee and maybe come to you guys. Like, I don't know, but there's like a lot of stuff that could be built out to help us all who live in this community reach these goals and to keep it in the forefront of our conversation about how we want to live in this community. So that's all I got. I hope it's okay for me to kind of insert myself into this process a little bit, but we're still taking applications.
Could I ask a question? Yes,
Yes,
Thank
please.
you for that, and I know Ed, you're involved in that too, but, with the education, I mean, are there classes being taught, or there's different things in the curriculum maybe that are, or is that kind of a self-promoting thing, or how do you, there are other things right now that are out there?
I
in the
imagine
schools?
parts of our curriculum and the various levels talk about these things, and Ned, you might be able to talk more about that. You teach very small children, but they're, you know, they're eager to learn, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I can answer that with precision.
Okay.
But
School by school, it's different, right? So
Yeah.
some schools really get into focusing on environmental education and. There's not like a uniform way of doing that. We do have state standards. We wrote them in 2017, so they're pretty new-ish. And I say we because a few of us from Green Bay got to help in Madison do that. But I don't know that, you know, there's a lot of push from maybe the top down to do more of that. I think it's more of an organic process among staff and students right now.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great to have something more
I guess,
widespread.
one of my concerns is like, okay, let's say we do this in Green Bay and Brown County, we're doing really well, we're a leader and all that stuff, but. There's a lot of counties in this area, you know, maybe other counties won't be doing it as much, so. You know, the atmosphere doesn't stop at Brown County, you know, I mean. It would be nice, it's gonna be a big project, you know, to getting all these different municipalities and counties involved in the same way. So you know, we can only keep moving, right? I guess that's the best way to put it.
Thank you for, yeah.
we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
We have 42 buildings. I mean, right there, we have a huge, you know, we're embedded in this community. So, it's actually we have more than 42 buildings. So, you know, I'd like to take a lead on this. I feel really optimistic and ambitious about it. But I also am reality based as well. So I don't know what form this is gonna take. You know, we'll have a meeting, our first meeting. And I don't know, next month or so. I don't know, stay tuned.
So thank you, Laura. Very exciting. Other comments, questions from the audience? Yeah, Natalie.
Yeah, Natalie Hoffman, 559 Rothy Street, Apartment 9 in Green Bay. I just wanted to commend the work that the Sustainability Commission and the Slipstream has done in creating this plan, because I think it's incredibly important that local municipalities are taking responsibility for our part that we play when it comes to climate change. So I think that, like, you know, like Mark was saying about how, you know, that we can only control what we do in our county, but we can definitely set the example for other communities that are our size, because like obviously we're no like Milwaukee or big city that, like, you know, is like doing like all this work and stuff, but like, you know, a community our size, I think we can really set the example for other communities like that to be able to implement this type of work like moving forward, which is I think incredibly important and a really great thing. So I'm really thankful that this is happening, and the plan has my support. So.
Yeah,
Don't appreciate it.
don't knock Green Bay too much. I mean, we're a mid-sized city, third or fourth largest in the state, so.
I'm just saying, like, you know, there's a lot of communities that are
the largest in the state, and a lot of cities look to Green Bay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we
As an
definitely
example.
Make an example
Yeah.
from this, because there also are. Well, there are reasons that Green Bay would actually provide a great example through the rest of the state, because I think more communities would relate to what Green Bay does than Milwaukee or Madison, for example.
Absolutely, that's what I'm really excited about.
Other questions from the audience, Zoom or in person? Other questions or comments? In the chat.
I was just gonna give a shout out to John Arndt. He's former Sustainability Commission member who's watching, and also Hayden Lanzer, who was our excellent intern from UWGB. That really did a ton of work with the fleet analysis and some of the energy data in the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. I don't think any of the NWTC students are in the meeting tonight. They did a lot of work as well for the benchmarking of the energy data. So Thank you, Haven. And thank you, John.
So is there somebody in the chat?
And
Oh.
John did have a question in the chat. Yeah, I didn't.
I'm supposed to use the chat function, but I don't know how to disable it.
So John, you have to ask that question in person.
Yeah,
How's
John,
the city
name, address.
historical
Yeah.
rate been
Sure.
model?
I can ask the question. So John Arndt, 726 Sunrise Lane, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Maddie, and I didn't remember this as I was looking through the report, but when we were talking about an annual 4% reduction, had we factored in the city's annual growth rate?
No, we didn't, because there's a lot of factors that can influence, like the growth rate is not directly related to an emissions growth rate. We've seen in lots of cities that it's actually been completely decoupled, and that as the city grows or develops economically, emissions are not necessarily growing. Actually, what we're seeing becoming business as usual is that there's just a natural reduction in carbon emissions that's occurring. And so it's actually would be kind of difficult and potentially false to assume that there's going to be a natural increase in the baseline. So for that reason, we just simplified it by staying constant at the current baseline.
All right, any other questions from the audience? While the floor is open.
Motion to close the floor.
There's a motion to close the floor. Alder Steuer, is there a second? I'll second. Mark 1, Mark 2. All those in favor say aye.
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 No. All right, thank you, everybody who attended and spoke tonight. Do we have any discussion from the commission on questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, or possible actions?
Yeah, I won't make the motion yet, but I do want to state that I think this is an incredibly important plan for the city to adopt and work towards. 4% reduction per year is not unachievable by any means. And I think this is a big first step to get to reduction in carbon emissions over the long haul. If you don't take action someplace, we're stuck where we are. As a former planner, I know that it's really important to get a plan together and adopt it and not put it on the shelf. So I think it's also something that the Sustainability Commission, the city, whatever committees it's going through, need to take a look at on a regular basis and make sure that we're taking action on some of the recommendations on an annual or whatever monthly basis, depending on what the actions are, so that we continue to advance this plan forward. Like I say, I think it's a great plan. It's a great model. I think we need it replace it.
Well, good points, Mark. There's no guarantees on anything. I do chair the INS committee, so my goal is to make sure that we are on it. We read it, we study it. We try to get most of our work done in committee level. You don't want to do committee work at council normally. But if we can do the work ahead of time at committee, I think that will bode well for council. I think when we had that GSI plan that recently we passed, there was a little panic by some council members because first of all, that was a very in-depth report. This is very in-depth. It's impossible for us to know every nuance. I know Mark probably understood that. But no, it's very difficult to understand every nuance on here, but I try to impress upon people that it's a plan and that we need to get it in the works so that it can be tweaked and amended and such over time. If we don't have it in place, then we have nothing to stand on. So that'll be the goal or that I will take at our committee level and try to move it forward.
Excellent. Other discussion? Yeah, great.
Just want to say I support the plan. I think it was very well thought out, a lot of great effort put into it by a lot of people, which I appreciate. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for Green Bay. Knowing it's going to cost a lot of money is a little concerning as, for somebody in my role, but understandably, I think, the city and support from alders and, things like that are going to go a long way for getting things implemented. And so I'm excited about it. I do too think that, you know, municipalities are a great place to lead by example, so having, you know, clean energy within our parks and other municipal buildings and things, I think are a great way for us to tell people this is important for our city. So I think it's a, like I said, a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this plan. And it feels like the culmination of a lot of conversations we've had over the last 5 years. A lot of hard work that's been done by Jenny and John and their students. A lot of work done at City Hall here by staff and volunteers. It's cool. It feels like kind of the end of the first phase of our existence as a commission, right? Like now we're getting into something new, but I love the plan. I think Mark's point about a regular review is a really thoughtful point. So I don't know if we're ready to make a motion. I think we could build that into the motion. Something such as adopting, referring with the intent to regularly review.
I mean, perhaps
I mean, you're saying it's
that
gonna
could
die on the
change.
shelf. We don't want it to die on the shelf.
You wonder if that could be done at INS too, but you know, I don't know, I think it's open.
I think I mean, the city's doing the comp plan update right now. I certainly see that the green stormwater infrastructure, things like that being incorporated, same as our park rec and open space plan. We're gonna be updating that, you know, in about a year or over the next year. So I think I see it like being implemented even more within plans, you know, and not necessarily being shelved because
So to fold this into the comprehensive plan.
exactly. I mean, that's what I'm imagining. If everybody's supportive of it, I could see it tying into other plans. So
You think that would be just seamless though? I mean, you have to state it, because you know, sometimes when we're gonna be doing the comp plan separately. And if we say, hey, we're gonna vote for this, but you gotta make sure we do this first, even though I think it's a good thing. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it.
I mean, a big part of any comprehensive plan, it should be an action plan or work plan, depends on what they call it. With some specific actionable timeframes for getting certain parts of the comp plan done. And, you know, in this case, it could be the same thing for this energy plan, or from the Sustainability Commission, or whatever committee it falls under, saying, okay, there are certain actionable items that we should support and continue to focus on over the course of the next 5 years for sure, and then 10 years and 15, 20 and so forth. Whether it folds into the comp plan directly or is I've done a lot of comprehensive planning work in my career, a lot of it, and comp plans tend to be so all encompassing that they're hard to percolate down to specific actions sometimes. I think this plan needs to stand on its own merits while still being referenced within the comprehensive plan as a goal in there, you know, just kind of a goal saying within the comprehensive plan, we should initiate the energy plan, and here are the steps we could do for that, but not necessarily roll it into it.
sure.
As a
Yeah,
supplement.
not necessarily. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't
no,
mean to, it
it's-
would kind of take over the planning from there.
So how would you do that with the motion? I guess, I mean,
Yeah, I'm gonna recognize Julia. She had her hand up.
Thanks, Seb. From the peanut gallery over here. Z gallery. I just wanted to follow up on the comment about the comp plan. I agree with what Corey was saying, and comp plan's a great place to fold this in, and it can be done in many different ways. It doesn't have to be the specifics or anything. It could be simply in the purpose statement. And it really sets like the intention of the city moving forward in development and redevelopment. So it could be attached as an appendix to the comp plan. And so I do encourage that those things get folded in a way that makes sense, but it is a good place to further codify the plans that we've been working on.
I mean, I would weigh in here, just to Ned's original point here. I think when we do biennial planning for the Sustainability Commission next year, I think we should get. The really good thing about getting this plan across the finish line, we're gonna have checked off a lot of our goals from the last few years. And to do exactly what you said, and that's be really specific about how this commission and this entity can really be on top of implementation, prioritization, review, keeping up with all of that. So I think that would be good. I don't know if I would want to fold that into the motion, but have that just kind of be the assumption and then have a longer conversation about it next year. And I would imagine the internal city team would be doing the same thing. I mean, as soon as we get this across the finish line, our number one priority needs to go from, maybe we'll celebrate a little bit, but go right into implementation mode. So it would make 2 cents.
What is the time frame for the comprehensive plan adoption? What did I ask?
Well, they just had the kickoff meeting less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it'll be a while.
Yeah, so I mean, it's will get adopted and.
December.
Right, right. Prior to the contract being completed, but
With it being implemented, is there, I mean, you need a strategy and like you said, so. You know, it's gotta go through city staff and other things like that. Is there, it would be nice to have something there to say, okay, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. And I don't think we're at that point, are we? No, I don't think so.
I think
Let's get it passed first.
keep it simple.
January.
Right.
You could say KISS if you want to keep it simple.
Silly.
Silly.
Okay, did we make our motion?
I mean,
Move it along?
yeah, the motion we did for the green infrastructure plan was, I think it would be an appropriate motion tonight, refer the Clean Energy Green Bay plan to the Improvement and Services Committee with the recommendation that it be adopted. So whoever wants to make that motion. Motion by
I'm
Ned.
very moved by this.
Yeah.
I will second that.
And seconded by Mark Walter. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those
Okay.
opposed?
And because I was trying to type a motion,
Yeah.
while you were taking your vote,
Yeah.
refer the clean energy Green Bay plan to the INS committee and then
With the recommendation for adoption. Luckily, I wrote it down. Otherwise, this would have been a lot harder, but I'm finally. And then that was Ned and Mark Walter, the first and second. respectively.
say again, sorry.
Ned
Ned.
and Mark.
Mom.
Just call me mom.
That is mine.
Just call it West Side.
Is it? My initials, my name
Got
of the bottom.
Yeah.
All right, so all those in favor, say aye, we said aye, all those opposed, say no. All right, plan passes. Very good, everybody. All right, and then now we'll move on to informational. We've got a waste reduction work group update and discussion regarding home composting sales in the next 2 years. I'm gonna let you do that. I'm gonna pass the gavel and I'm gonna see myself for just a second.
So every year statewide, there is a effort, usually by one of the counties. Right now it's by a nonprofit out of Stevens Point called Recycling Connections, to do a group buy of these really nice compost bins that the county sold for a while in the early part of the 2000s. Program didn't really work because we tried to work with the master gardeners in Brown County. They didn't have the space to store them, or really ambitious to get them out there. But anyway, the 2024 program is coming up right now. We are not in time to really make a decision because there is a cost up front to get the compost bins. And we don't have any budget on this. We have to buy them and pay by January 31st of 2024. So we wouldn't, I don't believe it. The Sustainability Commission had funding to make that action happen by that point. It's a group
We do have
purchase.
the authority to write a grant though.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's a group purchase that you buy these nice, they're called home compost. You can't buy them commercially. They're only selling through group sales statewide. One of the organizations I'm part of is actually involved in this. pricing is determined based on the number of bins that are sold, typically 50 to 55 bucks. So it's about the same as commercial, like Home Depot or Menards, but they're really nice, nice bins. I mean, the ones we've had at least 15 years old, and it's no deterioration. You know, my son has one in Madison, he likes to watch it. So what I'm suggesting is that we take a better look at this, look at whether we can set aside some funding, do a group purchase for next year, the 24 into 25. So the sale is in November with bins arriving sometime in February. Birthday, April, and also discuss whether or not we would subsidize any costs for residents.
I have it up on the screen too,
Yeah.
if you want a bigger picture.
And there will be more information in December. They're doing a quick webinar on December 5th about this program. Recycling Connections is a statewide, like I say, they're a nonprofit out of Stevens Point that they actually manage statewide organizations, solid waste and recycling organizations in the state. And then do a great job. We like I say, we've done, the county has done a big purchase in the past, but it's been 10, almost 10 years. We don't have, my department doesn't have the ability to do sales like this very easily. They won't let us do cash sales. And that's what most of it's require.
Would you want the city to be involved in something like this?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it makes sense to have the city involved. It's similar to, I think it goes hand in hand with the rain barrel program. A lot of communities do combine these.
I think that's one of the things that I was talking. We were talking about getting a little bit of money from public works for marketing and things like that. We'll start to talk about that, but maybe for next year's budget, we might have to look at a line item where sustainability is there. That we don't have to bag for $100 here, 500 there, that we'd actually be part of the process. We could have done it this year, but I think we should come up with that and just put a number on it and just say, we're here, period. So,
minimum purchases.
I won't be in office, but I can tell my.
Come advocate.
Somebody I could advocate.
You talk to your owner about that.
Yeah. Yeah, minimum whoever at like 55 bins, and roughly $50 to $55.
They're cheaper if you buy a slew of them, and then you get them cheaper per unit.
The more, yeah, so I mean, we're looking at $2,700. Yeah, the more that are more communities statewide that purchase go in on this, the more the lower the cost is. So the group purchase is from the company, which I can't remember where they're out of exactly, but they then deliver to each community that's part of the group purchase. So you know, pick them up, but you have to do at least 3 pallets or so.
The pails.
They also have pails.
That's a
yes.
different, that's like
part
part of the program.
but part of the same program.
But I like that, because that's what gets it from your kitchen to the container.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the
Yeah.
education process
That's
too.
true.
Mhm.
It's plan goes forward. It's education.
Having looked at the compost, the kitchen compost bins in the past as part of the program we were running. Those can be really inexpensive if we do. The companies that make like bio bags are actually willing to give communities kitchen compost bins as long as you buy their bags. Which most people use. I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people like bags as part of it. I didn't use them, but that's also an option. There are options for the kitchen bags. They're a little bit different than this program, but they go hand in hand together. I think that gets people thinking about it more. There's always that factor, I guess, that people don't like. So something. Yeah,
Sorry, I was gonna think like, maybe there's a way for us to gauge interest between now and a year from now.
Yeah.
To see if people would, like we did with we're able to do with the rain barrel signups. Maybe there's something to do online.
Yeah,
Would you be interested in ordering a city compost bin?
When we had the county's drop off program, we had almost 400 people who were part of that. Now it was countywide, but preponderance of people were from the city of Green Bay, east side, west side, and taking it upon themselves to collect their food waste and dropping it off at one site in Ashwaubenon. So we know that there are definitely people who are interested in that program already. There is, company, actually two companies now in this area that I believe they're doing collections, home composting of different kinds, or food waste collection. This would be something that individuals would take on their own in their backyard, and that's something we'll also have to explore in terms of how are we able to advocate for home composting, but there are other pest problems that also have to overcome in some areas.
I think this could be all part of that education hub you're talking about, like, when you talk about recycling or composting, it's like, yeah, it's a good thing, but it would be nice to have a list saying, how much food we waste every year and blah, 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 and just throw in some facts and figures and put that in there to add to it to say like, oh, wow, maybe I should do that. No guilt, right? But just information.
Composting, easy, just ask the possibilities. Okay. Further discussion? Sorry, yeah, cool, thank you for raising that. Announcements from folks? Today is officially America Recycles Day.
Yeah.
It's a program of Keep America Beautiful. They started a number of years ago. It's to raise awareness and get people to think more about their what they do for recycling, how they're recycling, especially in your local area. To try to understand it better. So yeah,
Not over yet, 5.5 hours.
state well, it's to get the awareness going today, or to heighten the awareness about recycling and make sure people are doing their recycling properly. The Tri-County Brown Heating Winnebago recycling system has actually developed some really, and I think I've talked about it, some really effective tools for knowing what you're supposed to recycle. And there's a lot of interest, especially in the cell phone app, the mobile app that allows you to scan your barcodes on products. It'll tell you our neighborhood or not, and that's really, that's been very effective for a lot of people. We've got several thousand users already of it. It's growing.
Show me that again. What app that is?
It's called Better Bin. Better Bin.
There's no first users, right? That'll be my homework assignment. You were showing
It's
Better Bin.
Better Bin, and it's a free download on Android or Apple, and you choose your community and recycling, and it will allow you to scan pretty much any barcode, because we actually deliberately go through and find really odd things and scan them just to continue to add to the
Oh, you want
database.
to do it right now?
You got anything with the barcode? You got anything with the barcode on it? That's the problem. I don't have anything with the barcode right now. I had to actually pull stuff off the recycling floor this morning for discussion you're having, so nice. Cool. It's America Recycles Day, every November 15th. Excellent.
I like it.
Happy. Good deal. Yeah, good.
Couple quick ones. Today that there was a pollinator corridor meeting out at Botanical Gardens. And I want to credit Maria Otto from our Conservation Corps, and Mark Conlock, he's the director of horticulture at Botanical Gardens, for really lighting a fire under the efforts again. And involving a whole ton of people from several different organizations to be part of the project. So look for new life in that in 2024. And then I just wanted to highlight some work that we're doing at the school where I teach, Aldo Leopold. We are doing the next trek. We've been doing that now for a couple of years, and it's a it's a great place. It's a great project. Kids are bringing in tons and tons of bags. We've earned at least 2 or 3 benches, I think. So it's been a lot of fun, and are we still doing that as a city?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And the unfortunate part of that is that on the downside, there's a expose on plastic bag collections by ABC News several months ago on the Eastern Seaboard, where they tracked like 60 bags that they put trackers on. And in that area, only 5 of the 60 ended up where they were supposed to be. Some ended up overseas, some never left the store, some went other places. Consequently, Walmart and Target are no longer drop-off sites on the official list.
Festival still is, and I trust
Festival
them.
is, and they go there. Festival is great, as part of their culture, sustainability culture. Taking the bags and doing things with them, they are absolutely the oldest and people at this point. They know that they're following through on it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Interesting way to do something.
I have an announcement.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, we had a ribbon cutting, for the installation of our canoe kayak launch. On St. George Street, so we've named it the St. George Street Canoe Kayak Launch. But in addition to that, we also constructed a portion of the East River Trail. And so for those of you who don't know, right now the Fox River Trail and East River Trail are about a mile away from each other. And so the installation of the section of the trail is to help bring those two trails together. So we're getting one step closer there. The kayak launch has been removed for the winter and it'll be put back in again come spring. So if you go out there now, that's why you wouldn't see it. But feel free to come out any time of the year to use the trail. And we're hoping that next year we'll have another section of the trail under construction, which would be the on Main Street between Baird and Irwin. So, and right now this section is almost to Main that we just constructed and goes all the way to Webster Avenue behind the new Golden House that was just built. So check it out. Oh, and there was stormwater management implemented as part of that project, as well as native plantings that went in, which the Nature Conservancy helped to fund. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Corey, is there any, on the West Side Trail, is there any talk about extending that?
There's
That's that little trail, you ever been on it? Yeah.
talk about it.
I go on, we go on it a lot, but there's no connection to the way.
Aren't you the alder out there?
Yeah.
That's even
Push it,
shorter.
man.
We
I
talked
go to one
about-
spot and I gotta turn around and go back. A ball face, it's kind of fun. Well, someday, right?
Yeah, it's definitely something we're still working towards, for sure. It's a little complicated because of the connection and a lot of wetlands, and some redevelopment that the church wanted to do that we were kind of waiting on as well, and so, of course, funding. But yes, we do have hopes and plans to still make that connection. Yeah.
And other announcements, anybody on Zoom? All
I
right,
mean, we actually have a marketing meeting on December 6th, right?
Yes.
So we'll be talking about some things. You know,
I have one quick announcement, sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Seth. This is new, that November 16th is going to be National Stormwater Day. I just found that out, and Melissa, if you haven't seen that information come through your email, I can send.
celebrate party.
I'm gonna
Weather
stay
could
up
be
tonight, write a press release.
It's to celebrate the beginning of the MS4 program in 1990.
Oh. Every day is a party.
What a big week for.
Man.
Cool, Mark, did you have anything else?
No, not really. I think, I think with this plan, hopefully going through, this past year, we had each month, we had like a theme.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking we could segue that to monthly themes for this plan, bigger and better things. But really come up with some strategies and put it on the hub, that type of thing, and really just get it in the consciousness.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that Corey's gonna do exclusively. We'll work on something.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, well, any other announcements? Zoom. At the table here. All right, and then we've got just an informational now that we've heard the clean energy plan, passed it on to committee. Committee is gonna meet Wednesday, November 29th. That's INS, that's downstairs.
Yeah, room 207 at 5 o'clock.
Immediately following parks.
Right,
Yeah.
so hopefully parks will go quick and as people will go there, they're like, wait a minute. You gotta wait.
So probably 5:30.
30-ish. Yeah, it's not a big deal. But yeah, if you can show up, great, you know, the more support that's there, the better.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you there. And then if, all goes well there, December 5th, that's a Tuesday. The plan will be at the, full common council meeting. That's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
The council chambers downstairs. Well, very good. Well, with nothing else on the agenda, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
With Ned with the first, we have a second. Mark Walter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Say no.
The
We're adjourned.
The Mark's hesitating, you guys both wanna.
We do want
Wanna jump on anyone?
Oh, that's fine.
You guys are sweet, that's fine, that's fine.
There's no ego on my part with it.
No, there's not. You're both very sweet. Gentlemen.
Use that term and stuff.
Maddie. So I'm gonna stop in such a recording.